What is art? Is it a fine painting, or is it an abstract mess? Is it a performance, or is it whatever we find pleasing to the eye? That is a question that some of the greatest philosophers of art have contemplated. What is art? Is art supposed to serve a purpose, or is art supposed to simply be aesthetically pleasing? But the funny thing is, that's not what the point of this video is. I'm not here to debate whether or not what is art. I'm not here to define what is art with these strict rules, because doing so ultimately hurts all artists. No. What I do want to have a conversation about is why contemporary art is not bad art. Hello, my name is Luna, and today I'm doing a less strict video. This is mostly just on my own personal conjecture and my own personal knowledge that I have developed as an art student, and basically what I've learned from basically studying art this long, right? Most of this will be a rant and my own personal feelings and expressions, so some will be factual, some of it won't be factual, and will completely be up to my own opinion, and therefore, take it with a grain of salt, right? Right. Okay, let me open up the scene with Dadaism. Dadaism. This was a point in time where artists were rebelling. This was during one of the world wars when art supplies was very few and far in between. Artists couldn't work traditionally. So artists who itched to create would create these ridiculous sculptures just made out of like chairs. And ultimately it created one of like the pieces that I personally like currently. It's called 3 Chairs by, I don't know the artist. I'll insert the artist's name here. Now, I like this piece mostly because it subverts what one would perceive as art. It's simply a man-made chair, which one, you could actually debate is art because it does serve a purpose, and all art technically serves a purpose. But the reason why it is in fact art is because these 3 objects, it's a chair, it is a picture of a chair, and it's the definition of the word chair. All 3 are chairs, but they are 3 very different types of chairs. It's a comment on how words, one could perceive it. Let me say that. One could perceive this artwork as a comment on how we perceive words, or how differently we can perceive words. Because a chair, when I describe a chair to you, some people might think of a genuine chair, a physical chair that you sit on. Some people might immediately associate chair with its definition. Someone might even associate a chair with an image of a chair, not necessarily a chair itself, and imagine it physically being in the space that I'm talking about, but an image. Now, I feel like this artwork mostly just shows us how the human mind works, how we perceive things very differently from each other. Now, why am I speaking about this, right? Because you might think, oh, well, that's not art, it's ridiculous, right? Because it is ridiculous. And Dadaism did produce us with some of the most ridiculous art pieces. For example, there was a little cappy thingy being put on a stool. There was a wonderful exhibition of a urinal being placed in a museum, and then the artist signed a fake signature on it. Now, inherently, that's not art, right? But it became art because of the commentary that it eventually made, right? Dadaism was an absurdist movement done by artists because they were questioning what the traditional academic definition of art. They were challenging what it was. At the point in time, most people thought the academic definition for art was simply artworks, drawings, paintings, something you spend hours and hours on and perfecting your craft. If you're going to do realism, you have to do it traditionally, and academically, you have to study that. If you're going to do impressionism, you can't differ. If you're going to do abstract art, that's a little bit less light, you know? That's why we got the whole salon of rejects in Paris after, you know, the first salon wouldn't take it. Now, the idea of the art being completely the whole point I'm saying is, right, Dadaism was an absurdist movement, right? It was supposed to be this crazy, groundbreaking existence movement that genuinely went against the status quo, right? But ultimately, it eventually died out after a year or so, when like the war got to its conclusion, right? Now, why am I speaking about this? Because there was a video I just saw on TikTok, right, of a wonderful, wonderful artist who decided to use the song from Hamilton, Who I'd Vote For, right? Jefferson Has My Vote, right? They put up 2 very interesting parallels. Contemporary art, which some people might be like, what's that? Basically, contemporary art is something what we would consider modern art, or at least not really modern art, because modern art is in the last 5 years or so. This art is a little bit older, but slightly newer. It's the type of modern art that you think of when you hear the word modern art. When I'm talking about the banana on duct tape to a wall, I'm talking about the terms of service of Instagram being pasted all the way down a wall. It's supposed to act as this intellectual, pretentious form of commentary, very similar to Dadaism, but completely different in the terms of one takes itself seriously, and the other one doesn't. Dada artists didn't actually take themselves seriously, right? When they did these 3 chairs, yes, they did have this bullshit commentary at the back of their minds that they would spew to other people when they were doing it, but I'm pretty sure most of it was just vandalism. They did not actually care. They did it because they wanted to rebel. It was about rebellion. Now, what we have currently in contemporary art, we have these amalgamations of drawings and lines and sculptures that don't really look like anything, and we get the common saying that most people say of like, oh, my 3-year-old could do that. How is that art? And how is it selling for like $1,000 or like 100 grand, right? Or 10 million, right? Specifically when I'm referring to like the banana one, right? It sold for a ridiculous amount of money. Now in this TikTok, the artist basically said, I would vote, because the two parallels was AI art and contemporary art. Now the artist eventually decided to pick contemporary art, and I fully understood why, because everybody hates AI art, right? Because at the end of the day, AI art is the worst type of art that you can produce. It's the worst type of writing you can produce. It's lazy, it's cheap, and you can do so much better if you actually put in work for it. See, for example, I cannot really spot AI writing and AI art, right? Because AI art looks beautiful, but I wouldn't know if it's AI unless somebody told me it was AI, right? Unless like it has glaringly obvious, or glaringly obvious flaws. Now in that situation, I genuinely do not have any commentary. Like I typically try to stay away from calling an artist an AI artist because I have no actual evidence, and I want to be able to say that the reason why I believe that they are AI is because I caught them using AI and not necessarily public conjecture, right? Now, so the AI art and the contemporary art were held as parallels to each other, both inherently bad. However, the artist eventually made multiple points about why they but don't like contemporary art. They basically decided to declare that contemporary art, typically, some of it does not really count as fine art, and we have to like discuss that in theory. Some of it is genuinely absurdism and also very capitalistic in nature, and like, oh, sell this artwork for like $1,000 and it's just like a banana on a wall, right? Like it's ridiculous. It's like the absurdism of capitalism, right? And that's what the artist was getting at. But what I fear, and then eventually made the point that, but at the end of the day, I'm still going to like contemporary art because contemporary art has a human soul to it, right? Now, like it has human talent, human intent, humans were behind contemporary art. Now, and I agree with that. I truly agree with that. Like if I was gonna have to choose between AI art and contemporary art, I'm obviously picking contemporary art. But I feel like we give contemporary art such a bad name when it actually isn't that bad of a of an art, what would we even call this? An art type? Contemporary art, because contemporary art isn't really a medium and it's not really a style either. Like, I could call you an art. Like, I can be like, oh, I'm an impressionist, right? And impressionism. Impressionist is a type of artist, and impressionism is a type of art style. But like contemporary art is weird in the same thing with modern art. Is it like I understand that we call these contemporary artists or modern artists. Like I feel like it's a type of artist, but I don't think it really counts as an art style because most contemporary art styles are just abstract, which is a completely different conversation than what I'm trying to get to, because even abstract art has meaning to it. Now, the reason why I feel like we give contemporary art such a bad rap is genuinely because contemporary art is inherently a performance. It is a commentary on the economic background that it is created in. It is a commentary on people's motives, actions, decisions financially and socially. And honestly, it's just a commentary on human nature as a whole. Because you can view the entire contemporary art trend as like a whole comment on human society, of how when we see art that doesn't fit into our narrative of beauty and what we deem to be art, we immediately demonize it and insult it and tear it down instead of trying to see beyond the picture. But in the same breath, am I looking too deeply into it? Am I trying to give these artists credit when they don't deserve it? And at the same time, the artists themselves are giving themselves too much credit, right? So like, because most of these artists are like, well, this blue stroke in the sea of red, and it's just like one blue stroke on a red canvas. And it's like, oh, it's supposed to resemble the hope and the light within my own rage. And I'm like, see, now I know that you're lying to me, because like that is very much conceptual art made of nonsense, right? Okay. I genuinely do not actually believe that phrase, oh, when an artist declares that their artwork means something, you kind of need to like absorb half of what you hear and more of what you see, right? For example, there was another story of an artist who had to do a school project, right? So when they came in the day of, everybody was doing their sculptures, they decided to take the scraps of wood from every single person, right? And like stapled it all together for their sculpture and then presented it to the class, right? The class was confused by her work, right? And they were like, what is this? And she basically declared, well, I wanted to make a piece about like all the leftovers of the world being thrown away and being scraps and so on and so forth, basically being a commentary on how we as society view things that we cannot use as simply trash, but I wanted to see it as beautiful and something that can eventually serve purpose, right? And the entire class clapped for her and they found that meaning to be profound and beautiful. But then later down the line, one of the artists in the class asked her, oh, how did you even come up with it? And she was like, well, I actually just made it up in my mind the day of because I had just forgotten to source my wood for my own sculpture. Sorry, right? And that is, I fear, the inherent issue with conceptual art and contemporary art. Humans. Human error makes contemporary art and all form of conceptual art inherently inherently icky in the terms of like, if a conceptual artist decides to make a conceptual piece, they actually have to put in a decent amount of time. Same thing with a contemporary artist. If you're going to give me an abstract mess, you need to at least have spent a good amount of time creating it, and it needs to have a good backstory, right? Because even if the concept and the backstory is all bullshit that you made up simply because you wanted to sell a piece, which inherently is, again, a comment on capitalistic society that we live in, because, again, all art is a commentary on everything, which is kind of why I'll get into that in a later section, right? So it makes it feel icky because now no conceptual artist can ever be validated for trying to create a story with their art, even though it's an abstract mess. Because you might view it as something, but the viewer is like, are you just lying so that we buy it? Do you get my understanding? It makes the entire trust process of like a viewer and art, the bond between viewer and artist, is now, the trust between these two is broken, because we, as the viewer of the work, cannot actually trust the artist's words that describe said work. Because, again, capitalism. Now, does that make contemporary art inherently bad? No. Because contemporary art, therefore, now serves a purpose. It acts as a simple comment on the way that capitalistic society has forced artists as a whole to shift the narrative and consistently strive to create artwork, not for beauty, not for themselves, not for the pleasure of other people around them, but for money. And to an extent, is it really capitalism's fault? Yes, it is, right? Or is it really just society's fault? It's both, technically, but capitalist society, you know what I'm getting at? Ultimately, all I have to say left is contemporary art isn't inherently bad purely because it's not its fault. It's not its fault that artists are consistently striving to earn money off of their art, because if they don't, they will starve, right? Because everybody wants artists to just be able to produce art for free and for artists to love doing what they want to do for free. But again, we live in a society where you need money in order to get food on the table. So you might hate contemporary art because, oh, it's just squiggles on a page, but those squiggles on a page are feeding someone, and you might think it's ridiculous, but contemporary art also serves an aesthetic purposes for minimalists. Like, again, why do you think, for example, people don't buy Renaissance art paintings anymore, okay? People don't buy Impressionistic paintings. People don't buy realism paintings to put up in their houses. You put it up in a gallery, people buy it, and then they put it in their art collection in a dark corner of whatever house they've got. Again, you're appealing to people with money, and people with money do not want this splendid, fantastical scene of like rainbows and like wondrous beauty. They want black and white so that it fits with their decor. Because again, we live in a society where we've strayed away from the colorful brightness, which is a whole other conversation of how modern day beauty basically demonizes all forms of saturation and ultimately strays away from the path's colorful nature. And we are now facing the era of gray, right? But low-key, I feel like we are moving closer away from that, and we're going back into that color. We're going back for color in our homes. So maybe we'll see a resurgence of beautiful paintings again that are impressionistic and realistic and less so contemporary. Anyway, that was just a spiel about art. I'm not going to label this as a video essay purely because I don't think it counts, mostly because I'm yapping about like art and stuff, and typically when I yap about art and stuff, or like yap about anything, it's genuinely just nonsense. And also, this video has minimal to no editing, meaning you're about to either listen to the most, again, you listened this far, so like if you listened this far, please drop a like, press the like button, subscribe to my channel, and like this is a rant, right? Like it genuinely doesn't count for like as a video essay, but I'm gonna label it as a video essay. I think I am gonna label it, like definitely, because like that's better for my engagement. Now, thank you guys for listening this long. Again, it's me, Luna. I write stuff. I'm a writer. I have written an entire 400-page fantasy novel, and I'm in the process of editing it. Am I marketing it? No, not yet, at least, because that takes time. I might do more content like this where I'm just like inspired and do like random rants about things using my own personal knowledge and a little bit of factoids and like history. Because again, I have this weird thing of like, I have like an amazing memory where I just like remember stuff, but like for some reason, I could not use this to apply to definitions for physical sciences in high school, so cooked, I fear. Yeah. Also, if you didn't notice, I'm using a lot more slang in this thing, and I feel like it's mostly because I've become more chill. Again, this is like the outro, by the way. Like, you would have clicked off by now, I think, but I'm glad that you stayed for this long. Anyway, drop a crescent, drop like like the blue moon face thingy, like the sneaky one, whatever it means, in the comment section if you've gotten to this point. Thank you for watching. I will see you guys maybe next week for another long form-ish video.